Thank you for that very inspiring introduction. We're going to have a discourse today on the topic of joyful living. And I see, I don't know if the people in the back chairs can be found for you. If perhaps you could bring some in. I hate to see you standing there. But before we begin the actual discourse, I would like to invite our choir to come forward. Swami Kriyananda was a great musician, and he loved music. And he felt music was a very important part of the mission of reaching other people. And so he wrote over 450 songs, and they're going to perform one or two of them today for us. So please come. There are also still a few seats up in front if anybody would like to take them. I still remember what Sairams said about coming here in 2013. That was the last program that Swami Kriyananda, that he did here in Chennai, was the last large public program that he did in his life. He had been lecturing steadily for 65 years, ever since actually he met Swami or Paramahansa Yogananda in 1948. Yoganandaji threw him out in front of the crowds, very untrained in his own mind, but yet he brought talent from a past lifetime, I'm sure. And he asked him immediately to become an instrument in sharing these teachings of self-realization with people. And Swami took it up. He had a great desire. He said that when he met Paramahansa Yogananda, it was after a bus journey across the United States. He had read the autobiography of a yogi in 1948, a long time ago. He read that book as a young man, desperate for something more in life. He wanted something. He knew there was a vacuum or something missing in his heart, and he wanted to fill that vacuum, but he didn't know exactly what it was. Generally, he thought he wanted to know truth. He wanted to know the meaning of life. He wanted to know, as he later learned, he wanted to know how to be happy, how to be joyful, and actually even more than joyful, he wanted to know bliss. And this is what his heart was seeking, but he wasn't able to say what it was at that time. All he knew is he had an emptiness in his heart. And he found the autobiography of a yogi in a bookstore in New York City, read that book from cover to cover, and immediately took a bus across the country. It took him 4 days across the country to meet Yogananda. And he said to him, "Sir," his first words were, "I want to be your disciple." And from there, his life changed. The master accepted him, blessed him, and invited him into the ashram to be his disciple. Although at that time, it was a little bit touch and go because the master wasn't accepting many disciples in those days. But the point I want to make is yes, he became that disciple in 1948. But on that bus trip across the country, there were two primary thoughts in his mind. One, he wanted to know God. That was his motivation. He didn't know what God was. He didn't know what God meant. He didn't have any conception of it, but he knew in some way, some deep sense, that that was what was missing in his life. But he had a second great desire when he was traveling on that bus. He wanted to know for himself, but he wanted to be able to share that with everybody else, because it was so wonderful, the discovery that he had made in his life. This is what I want in life. Everybody needs to know this. And his life was motivated by those two desires, and it was that which Paramahansa Yogananda recognized in him, that desire to share, that immediately he took him and began putting him in front of audiences to share. He never, Swamiji never said he taught. He didn't teach anybody, but he loved to share. And in that same spirit, I think this is what Ananda Sangha does here in Chennai. And that discourse that he gave, and it's on video, you can watch it if you've never watched it. You can ask the Acharyas here and they'll make it available to you. That last discourse, he was so sweet, so happy, so bliss-filled, because he had come to Chennai, a city that he had not visited in quite a long, long time. And he knew his body was failing. And we knew his body was failing, those that we were with him at that time. And so we organized this program in Chennai. And we thought, well, we don't know when Swamiji will be back here, and so let's book the Music Academy. It's a beautiful hall. It's a prominent hall in the city. Let's book maybe people will come. Maybe people will come. And so we sent one of our brahmachari monks here to organize and advertise, and he began going about the city organizing, putting up posters, but budget was limited, so he couldn't do too many. But yet people came, and they came, and they came. And we had to actually delay a little bit because people kept coming, and it was my task. Actually, I look back, it was a great honor. It was a great honor for me to be able to introduce the program. And so I went up to the program and podium, and I looked out on the audience, and it was full. And not only that, the back people were standing in the back. They were standing down the side aisles. They were sitting in the aisles there. They were sitting here. They were on the corners of the stage. And the doors were open. And there were people I could see out the doors, crowds. And I was told there was a lobby, that it was being broadcast video in the lobby. And they said it was full. And they had to turn away 1,000 people. And Swami came out on that stage. And he was so happy. Not that he had a big crowd. Of course, it always is pleasing to see that people are interested. But he saw the faces of the people. And he felt the spirit of Chennai that night. That people wanted to hear about God. That they were interested. And that was what was the most pleasing thing always to Swami. Not how many, but the quality when people were interested in hearing about his guru, is what Swami ended up speaking about that night, about his life with his guru. But little did we know that that would be the last major talk. He gave another one or two small satsang talks to smaller groups of people in other cities. But that was his last major talk, because it was only 4 months later that he passed. He had returned to a home he had in Italy at our ashram there in Assisi, and he passed from there. And it was a great sadness and loss to all of us, of course, who knew him. But on the other hand, we rejoiced for him because he was having a difficult time in his body in those last years of his life. And he wanted he said, I didn't know, why am I still here? He was wanting to go to God, and God finally, and the masters came and took him, and he went out in a, you might say, a blaze of bliss is how I would describe it. So I'm pleased to be here in Chennai again. I believe this is the second time we've been in this venue. We did another program here a couple of years ago. And tonight we're going to be talking about joyful living. And of course, when I think about joyful living, I think about my teacher. I came to Swami Krishna in 1968, and he immediately pointed me. I thought perhaps Swamiji might be my guru, and perhaps he was actually, but he pointed me, he says, no, Yoganandaji is your guru. I'm just his humble disciple, and it's my role to be a good disciple and bring others to him. So I accepted that. So I call him my divine teacher, and I came to him, and I found in him the example that I was looking for. And I'd like to begin by starting by telling you a little bit of a story from another tradition. In North India, there was a famous, in that region at least, he was well known, put it that way, a well-known saint, yogi. His name was Neem Karoli Baba. Many of you have heard of him, Neem Karoli Baba? Yeah, he passed some years ago, but he was quite well known, and he was prominent in the 1960s, 1970s, and somewhere after that he passed, took Mahasamadhi. But I had known people who had known him or had met Neem Karoli Baba, and I remember one story particularly that always stuck with me about him. And this person said that he had gone to Neem Karoli Baba's ashram. It's on the road from the plains and going up toward Raniket, some kilometers up, and he had gone there. And he returned and was speaking to people about what Neem Karoli Baba was, what he was like. And he said something. He said, it was not surprising to me that Neem Karoli Baba loved everybody. That was not surprising. He was a great saint. He loved everybody. But what was surprising to me was that when I was in his presence, I loved everybody. His vibration transformed everybody who was with him. And that story resonated with me because that's exactly what Swami Kriyananda was like. I met Swami Kriyananda as a young man of 22. A young man of 22 who was looking for something, not knowing exactly what it was. I was looking for happiness, I suppose, but I didn't say that. What I was looking for was excitement, and what you look for when you're 22 years old, and you're looking for all sorts of things in all sorts of different directions. One thing, the more exciting, the more enticing, and I wanted, you know how it is when you're 22 or 20. Well, that was me, but there was something missing. And I was looking for something. And when I met Swami Kriyananda, who I heard giving a discourse on the radio, and he mentioned that he was having some classes and that if anybody interested, please go. And so I heard that, and I said, oh. So I went to the class. I met him, introduced himself to me, and began to associate. And I found that whenever I was in his presence, I was happier. I just felt better. There was a certain joyfulness. He was joyful. And then I couldn't help but be joyful. I'd start to tell him about some of the difficulties I was having, and he would ask, how are you? And and I found that I just couldn't go very far in that direction. I certainly couldn't entertain his interest. And I just began to feel joyful too. I felt in that presence, I felt an upliftment that attracted me. And I didn't know why. And I began to associate. And he exemplified for me a person who was able to live joyfully. And my association with him over close to 50 years, in a sense, is learning that lesson. What does it take to be joyful? And I'd like to share a few thoughts with you about that today. But I want to begin by playing a chant. And I want you to sing with me on this chant. I've picked one very simple chant, so it's not difficult at all. We sing this together, and this is a chant that Swami Kriyananda wrote, but it's using words from his master, Paramahansa Yogananda. But he put the very simple chants. It says, "From joy I came, for joy I live, in sacred joy I melt again. From joy I came, for joy I live, in sacred joy I melt again." So let's sing this. And you might say, I'm going to challenge you, because sometimes when I ask people to sing, they're shy. And let's see if you can overcome that. From joy I came, for joy I live, in sacred joy I melt again. From joy I came, for joy I live, in sacred joy I melt again. From joy I came, for joy I live, in sacred joy I melt again. From joy I came, for joy I live, in sacred joy I melt again. From joy I came, for joy I live, in sacred joy I melt again. From joy I came, for joy I live, in sacred joy I melt again. From joy I came, for joy I live, in sacred joy I melt again. From joy I came, for joy I live, in sacred joy I melt again. From joy I came, for joy I live, in sacred joy I melt again. From joy I came, for joy I live, in sacred joy I melt again. From joy I came, for joy I live, in sacred joy I melt again. From joy I came, for joy I live, in sacred joy I melt again. From joy I came, for joy I live, in sacred joy I melt again. From joy I came, for joy I live, in sacred joy I melt again. From joy I came, for joy I live, in sacred joy I melt again. From joy I came, for joy I live, in sacred joy I melt again. From joy I came, for joy I live, in sacred joy I melt again. From joy I came, for joy I live, in sacred joy I melt again. From joy I came, for joy I live, in sacred joy I melt again. Now I'd like you to just sit up straight. Sit up straight. Look upward, up to the point between the eyebrows, gently, with the eyes uplifted. Look there into the darkness of space behind closed eyes. If you can, imagine a light there and feel that that light coming into the body is joy. There's joy coming in, and feel yourself surrounded by that joy, and that joy coming in into the brain, down the nervous system, driving away all darkness, all sorrow. As I mentioned, I met Kriyanandaji in 1968, and it was very shortly after that he told a story that impressed me, that it clarified for me something that I wanted to have. And the story went that he was driving a car with a couple of other students that were in this car, and he had an accident. He ran into another car or another vehicle, and it disabled his vehicle. It wasn't a major accident, no one was hurt, but the car was disabled and he couldn't continue on his journey. But fortunately, very close by there was a bus, and he was able to, him and his friends, they got on the bus, they parked the car, left it there for later, got on the bus and began to travel, and they were having a good time. They were talking, and just in a very light manner. You could obviously see that they were happy. And there was a lady on the bus who, seeing them, asked Kriyananda, said, Sir, are you the fellow who was in that car over there that had the accident? And he says, yes, madam, that was me. And she says, well, you seem awful happy. You should be, in other words, you should be sad. You had this accident. Now your car's wrecked. You seem awful happy. And Swamiji said something to her, back to her. He says, well, madam, you see, in 2 or 3 weeks, my car is going to be fixed. Now, and I will be happy when it's fixed. But why should I waste 2 or 3 weeks being unhappy? Why not be happy right now? And I'm always been curious with that story, what the lady said. I don't know. But it was a very unique response that she was not expecting, because when something happens to us in life, it seems outwardly, it seems to be, it's a disaster, or that's wrecked your car. You should be unhappy. But I ask you the question, why? Why should you be unhappy? Something has happened. Maybe it's not in your favor, so therefore you're going to be unhappy. Well, life is full of these situations in life. It's favorable, unfavorable, favorable, unfavorable, day after day. There's something up, something down. And if you're happy and you're sad, you're happy and you're sad, happy and you're sad, who's in control of your life? You're not in control of your life. Circumstances are in control of your life, and you have no control over your life. If you want to take control of your life, you make the choice of whether or not you're going to be happy or not happy, how you're going to react to whatever happens around you. And this seems, when you say this to people, I say this to people, they seem, that's a novel concept. I never thought of that. That I can be happy when I choose to be happy or not. Now, when I heard that, Swamiji, he told that story, I said, that's it. That's it. That made so much sense to me that I said, that's what I want. I want that power. And believe me, now, we're talking about these great masters came and they talked about Kriya Yoga. You're not going to hear me talk about Kriya Yoga very much today. You're not going to hear the word yoga too much, but maybe at the end. But but what we're talking about is yoga, but we're talking about yoga in everyday life. And when people think about yoga, they think about, oh, you gain certain powers off of that, don't you? And yes, you do. And the power that you gain out of the practice of these techniques, these teachings, is you get to choose whether you want to be a slave of your circumstances in life, or whether you can be happy when you choose to be happy, and you can be joyful, and you can live your life joyfully, not dependent upon what is going on around you. It's from inside, because we learned quite quickly, and I think most of you must be aware by now, that happiness is not something outside. It's something inside, and we make the choice. The same would be said for the opposite, suffering. Suffering is not out there. Some circumstances don't favor us, but it's just circumstances. Whether we suffer or not is something that's happening inside of ourselves, something that we can choose and that we can make the decision about. Now, Swamiji was a great musician. I mentioned that he wrote these 450 songs, and in the early days when he first began composing music, and he didn't start composing music till he was almost 40 years old, not when he was 20s and in his young age. It was almost when he got to be 40 years old, and he found that music was a good way to reach people. He was always looking for ways to touch people, and so he began to think, well, maybe music. And he was a good singer. He had always been able to sing, so he began to sing, and he began to, when he had that idea of composing music, songs began to come to him spontaneously, and he began to come and he'd write them down very quickly, and he'd write the melodies. And he needed to learn how to, he thought, well, I need to be able to accompany my songs with a musical instrument, so he bought a guitar, and he taught himself how to play the guitar. And he had a guitar teacher who he went to help him learn how to play. And so he would go to his teacher and he would play the guitar, and he would share his songs with his guitar teacher. And the guitar teacher said, well, you know, you're quite talented, but all your songs are happy. You only write happy songs. And life isn't like that. Life is suffering. It's hardship. And you should be singing songs about that too. And Swami didn't want to argue with his teacher, of course. It wasn't proper for him to do that. But he said, well, yes, I write happy songs, but I write happy songs not because I haven't suffered, or that because I don't know suffering. I write happy songs because I've earned the right to write happy songs because I have suffered. And many people think, well, to be happy all the time is to deny the fact that there is suffering in this world and that we suffer. And that's not the answer at all. It's not because of that there is suffering in this world, but yet we can rise above that suffering. Swami himself said that much of his life, in his torment to come to find his guru, he suffered tremendously, and later on in his life with his guru, he ended up having differences with his guru's organization after Yogananda passed, and they gave him the boot, you might say, and he suffered tremendously with that. It was great pain for him to go through life, but at the same time, he said, he saw that underneath all the suffering, somebody didn't follow instructions. That underneath that, there was also joy. And I think this is something that we become to realize, that suffering and joy are not necessarily on the opposite sides of the spectrum. They can both be there. But we can rise above the one to the other. There's a story from the life of Ramakrishna of Calcutta, of the Dakshineswar, last 19th century. And in his latter life, last few years of his life, he suffered from, and eventually it was what ultimately took his life. He suffered from throat cancer. And so he was in great pain at that time in the last years of his life, outwardly appearing at least to be in great pain. And back in the 19th century, of course, they didn't have medications for the pain to be able to alleviate what we would have now. And so in those days, you just had to bear it. And he was. And one of his disciples came to him and said, "Sir, that's two times." You know, that's divergent. You know, so once Swami was giving a lecture, and he was saying, "Now I want everybody to turn their mobiles off, and make sure you turn your mobiles off." And then about 5 minutes later, somebody's mobile was ringing. He says, "Whose mobile is that?" Oh, it's mine. It was so I put mine on airplane mode, not to get caught in that. But the disciples comes to Ramakrishna and says, "How are you, sir? How are you?" And Ramakrishna says, "Oh, it's so painful. Oh. And yes, and it's painful here, and I've got this pain, and I've got that pain, I've got this, and I've got that." And he was going on like this. You know, so he was going on, and this happens, and it's terrible. You know, he was going like that. And as he was talking, the disciple started feeling inside of him this great joy coming up, and he was getting joy. Joy was, as Yogananda, or as Ramakrishna would speak of his ailments, there was this tremendous, and pretty soon there was so much joy. He says, Master, stop. I know what you're feeling inside. I know what you're feeling inside. You see, he wasn't suffering. He was in joy. But the body was doing what the body does. But he rose above it in joy. He rose above it in bliss. He had that God's presence, and that's what he was in. So it's not a matter of either or. It's which one do you choose to identify yourself with? Which one do you choose to immerse yourself in? Now, when a person, in the position that I find myself, I meet a lot of people who suffer, and it's painful. It's painful. It's painful to me. The people tell me of their sufferings, and of course they're asking for help. And I listen, mostly. You listen and you try to empathize and give what help you can to the people that come, and share whatever blessings you can with them. And perhaps once in a while you can give a little solution or some help. So that happens quite frequently. And so I know how it's suffering. This world is full of suffering. Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, what does he say? "Oh, Arjuna, get away from this ocean of Maya, of suffering." That's what he counsels us. But when he said get away, he didn't mean go into a cave. He said, you and me, get away from it. Rise above it. Go above that pain and suffering into a realm where bliss exists, where God exists, where that Krishna consciousness exists. That's what he was saying. So that suffering is there. So when a person speaks to me of suffering, believe me, I do not give them a philosophical discourse. Because we've been those, and we've all suffered at some point in life. And at those times, sometimes the most you can do is endure. You have to endure and give, and have an element of empathy for other people, to be able to comfort other people. You have to be appropriate to where people are at that time in their life. But what I always try to do with people, if necessary, is to give people a sense of hope that the experience of joy in your life, no matter what is happening outside of you, there is a chance for joy to be experienced also. Joy is there, bliss is there. Because what are bliss and joy really? They're expressions of the divine. God is there. God is there whether you are experiencing and can feel that or not. It's there. But we don't always feel it because the suffering will often drive that out of our consciousness. But that joy is always there. So I encourage people to say, have hope. Because the ability to live a joyful life starts with that, an understanding that the potential to be able to experience joy, to be able to experience bliss, to be able to experience even happiness, that is there all the time, even though sometimes it's very, very dark in our lives. But yet, it's in darkness, whatever darkness you find yourself in, look for a little bit of light, wherever it might be. And if you see that light, focus on that and go in that direction. Because that's where we want to go. Because no suffering is ever going to be eternal. It can't last. It's just because the universe is not built that way. The essence of this universe is God consciousness. Bliss is ultimately the basis of this universe. And that bliss expresses itself through joy, which you can think of bliss as more of a cosmic reality, but that expresses in each of us as joy. And that's there if we choose to find it. So the beginning point is to have hope. It's like that lantern on a very dark night. If the wind blows it out, you can't proceed. You have to stop because you don't know where you are until you light that lamp once again. So as long as that lamp of hope, and if you find yourself, I say this because all of us at one point in our life are going to find ourselves in the midst of other people suffering. It happens to all of us. We have family, we have situations, people pass, and you'll find people that are suffering. What can you do? You empathize, you give comfort, you help them, you love them. You don't give them philosophical lectures. At that time, you give them comfort, and try to give them hope too. Because sometimes when you're suffering, it doesn't seem like there's going to be anything down the road, but there is, and you proceed. And that light, and if you see whatever light people see, you grab it, and then you begin. It's lighting that lamp. And once that lamp is lit, then you can make progress again. And if you can't light, if people totally lose hope, it'll have to wait until the next life. That's death comes, and then we start again, and we try again. But why wait? Why not now try to continue to move in that direction? And it begins by moving in a direction where there's light. But in order for that to happen, to make progress, to live a joyful life, there's this element that we have to understand. We cannot wait for happiness to come to us. We cannot wait for joy to come to us. We can't wait until circumstances arrange themselves, because it's a misunderstanding to think that we're going to be happy if our circumstances change. Now, it's true. Circumstances change, and it can make us happy a little bit. But why wait for that? Because it's not outside of ourselves. The seeds of happiness and joy are planted within our very own hearts. And the key for us, if we want to be happy and live a joyful life, is to remove ourselves from having to have circumstances be the determining factor in our life of whether we're happy or not. We want to be able to choose that at any time, so that I'm happy when I choose to be happy. I have joy at my command. And this is the greatest power that can be given to us, is to be able to have that ability to summon joy in any circumstance. In any circumstance. Now, what is it that allows us to be able to do that? And it begins by having the ability to make a choice in life. The ability to choose. And this is what makes us human. The ability to choose. We have the ability to go in one direction or another direction. And this is a great gift that God has given us, that ability to choose. And some people use their choice and some don't. Some who use their choice choose badly and some choose wisely. But nevertheless, the ability to choose and to go forward, this is what we want in life, and this is what all of us are seeking. And to be able to make that choice, we need to be aware and to cultivate that. That's a tool that we have been given, to be able to put ourselves in an environment where other people are happy, just like in my example of putting myself in Swami Kriyananda's company. When I began to notice that, when I'm in his company, I seem to be happier. Somehow I like it. And so what did I do? I chose to, Swami, he asked me, I would visit him on in his flat once a week. And he had a project that he was doing, and he asked me, he said, well, would you be willing to help me? And I says, yeah. And it went through my mind, well, if I help him, oh gosh, that's going to take time, but it's going to interrupt my normal routine. But I thought, oh, that's a crazy answer. So I says, yes, I'll help. And he says, okay. And so I began to help him. And now others were asked that same thing, and I think we've all said together that we didn't realize it was going to be such a long project. But and here we are still many years later trying to help. But I said, yes, I'll help. And I put myself into that environment. Now that's one thing we can do, is to choose our environment. Make the choices things that are going to help. But in any case, I made the choice. And this is what these teachings that these great masters bring, is to awaken us to the reality, this reality that we can choose. And we're not subject to what's going on around us. And if we choose wisely, we can become aware to begin to say, yes, I am going to choose happiness. I'm going to be happy. And we gain the ability, even in the midst of dark times, to remember that little bit of joy that's there. Now, it helps if we have a little taste of what that joy is first. And that's also what these teachings are going to be able to give us. Now, there's certain qualities, or you might say certain ways of approaching life that are going to make you, this evening, I wanted to give you some practical suggestions how to live a joyful life. First, I've mentioned a few things. I've mentioned learning the ability to choose, to say yes. But you have to do more than just choose. You have to also act. You have to actually act. Now, some of you were here yesterday. I told this story I'd like to tell to a wider audience. I was in Delhi last year, and I was giving a series of discourses, and one fellow came afterwards, and he said, I liked your discourse. What I want to do is I want to come and meditate with you. And so I said, come meditate with me, and you can come. And he says, I was very inspired, so let me come meditate with you in the morning. Okay, so I invited him to come, and I said, I will go down and unlock the gate at 5 a.m, and then you can come in at any time, and I'll be there meditating, and you come. So the next day, the day came, and I went down, unlocked the gate, and he didn't come. Nobody came. I was there all morning. He didn't come. I went Tuesday. He didn't come. Wednesday, he didn't come. And that the whole week, he never came. And in fact, he never came back to the next class either. And I was very mystified because he seemed so sincere. And I thought about it. And he said to me, when he asked me, he said, "I would like to come and meditate with you." What did he not say? He did not say, "I will come to meditate with you." He said, "I would like to." Now, haven't you heard some variation of this? Yes. Are you coming to the dinner tomorrow night? Oh, I'd like to come. Or definitely, I would like to come. And yeah, I'd like to be there. You see. And so this is what he did. He said, "I'd like to come and meditate with you." Now, it was his initiative. I didn't ask him. He said he came to me. But he said, "I'd like to come." But he was missing, "I will come." He was the ability to act, to actually do something. Now, what he wanted the power to be able to act and to do something. He didn't have the power to actually act. He was asking, I would like it if I had that power to actually do something. That's what he was saying. And if we want to be happy, we can't just wish. We have to actually act. And there's a principle here. Because many times people come and they ask for blessing. They want God's grace isn't it so? We go to the temple, we're asking God's blessings on us, but God will not do it for us. God will help us, you see. God will help us. There was a disciple of Yogananda's who said, "Oh, Master," Yogananda had asked him to do something, and he said, the young man said, "Oh, Master, yes, I'll do that but I'll need your blessings." And Yogananda, that sounds nice. And Yogananda said to him, "Well, God's blessings are there already. My blessings are there already. God's blessings are there already. It's your blessings that are missing." And we have to add our blessings to whatever it is that we want to do in life. And if we add our blessings, we take that first step, and you'll find that the blessings will come if we're open to them. If we ask, blessings will come. We think we're acting in this world. We have to initiate that action, but it's God's power that comes behind us, the Guru's power, that really is able for us to accomplish something in life. If we're open to that power, it'll come to help us. But we have to take that initial movement. And so consequently, when we're looking to say, how can I live a joyful life, we have to initiate that action. We have to initiate that. And so before I was coming here this evening, I wanted to give you a number of practical suggestions. So this isn't philosophical. And because I ended up getting my list quite long, I began to jot them down. And so I'm going to refer, because I ended up with 16 points, which is probably too many for tonight, but I have them. It says, one of the beginning things is if you're looking to bring more joy into your life, you want to live a joyful life, start with a grateful heart. Why don't you because what we're asking is when we're asking, we pray to God, God, I want your blessings. I want your help in life. I want this or that. But how much are we actually first appreciative and grateful for what God has given us already. And so if we approach life, we approach God, we approach our prayers with an attitude of gratitude, being grateful for what it is that has been given to us already, then we find that in that act of gratitude, we find ourselves becoming happy. We find ourselves being able to have that joy begins to bubble up within us. Because one of the obstacles to being happy, one of the obstacles to having joy in one's life is we tend to be thinking of our own suffering. We tend to think that I'm unhappy, I need this. We turn our direction toward ourselves, and it makes us the very thought of directing our attention to ourselves induces unhappiness. If you can instead turn that around and be grateful. Now, I've often recommended, if you want to take this up, take a pen at night and write a letter of gratitude to whatever it is. Think of something. I hope you have a little bit of time at night before you go to bed. If you think of God at night, prayers at night, meditation at night, just say, God, I'm grateful. Thank you. Thank you for everything that's come to me today, good and bad. If you open yourself up in that way, you'll find that things begin to come. And if you're willing to be grateful for whatever comes to you, you see, now this is the hard part. Can you be grateful to whatever comes? Can you see that whatever comes to you in life is yours? It's God's gift to you. Now that's difficult. Whatever comes. Is it coming? Why is it coming? Now, one, you could say it's coming to you because it's your karma. Okay, if it's your karma, it's your karma. It's your karma to deal with. So okay, that's one. You could see it as a gift. You could see it as something, a challenge that has been given to you. Whatever it is that you run into in life, difficulties, if you learn to not push it away, accept it. This is yours. And if you can take the next step and even be grateful, now that's a little harder. But if the first step is to accept that whatever comes to you in life is yours to deal with, and don't push it away. If you don't push it away and you accept it, you don't have to like it. I'm not saying that. But you have to accept it, that it's yours to deal with, whatever suffering comes. If you then can take it, say, yes, this is mine, because through this, I am going to become a better person, a stronger person. I'm going to come to understanding of what and why this has come to me. And you accept that. If you have that acceptance, and then you get to the point and say, whatever comes, Lord, let it come. What happens then? You're no longer afraid. You're no longer afraid. Nothing can touch you after that because you're not afraid. Because whatever is going to come to you, you're going to deal with it. Well, you're going to deal with it well. Maybe you don't deal with it, and maybe you don't like it, but you accept it. And when you can accept, your heart becomes open and you're no longer tight about resisting life, but instead you're going with whatever life offers you. And you find that if you can take whatever comes to you, say, bring it, Lord, I'll take it, it's mine. If it's mine, bring it, I'll deal with it. You no longer are afraid, you no longer worry, because it's going to come in its own time, so why worry? And you find you become centered. You can stand, as Paramahansa Yogananda used to say, you can stand unshaken in the midst of crashing worlds. There's a fun story that I like from the Zen tradition. And there was a Zen master. He was the priest of a temple. And at that time there was warfare going on in the kingdom. And so a enemy army invaded the kingdom. And as the army was coming, all the villagers fled because they knew the army was coming and they were going to be perhaps killed. So they all ran. They fled the village, except for the Zen priest of the temple. And he was there. And the army comes in, and the general is in the front of his army, and the general goes to the center of the village, and there's the temple there, and he sees the priest there. And he walks up to the priest and says to him, "You fool! Don't you know that you are standing in front of the man who can run you through with the sword in the blink of an eye?" And the priest very calmly says, "Well, don't you know, you should know, that standing before you is the man who can be run through with the sword without blinking an eye." And the general paused, and he let him go. You see, nothing touched him. You're beyond being touched. And when you're no longer living in a state of, what if this happens? What if that happens? What if, and worry, fear of this, fear of that. Oh my God, I'm going to go up there and I'm going to make a fool of myself. Oh, and all of these things that we go through, especially I think back when you were a teenager, oh my God. One reason not to come back, but all of those little fears, social anxieties, all of those things, what if this, what if that, self-consciousness, gone. If you can learn to accept what comes of itself, let it come. And be able to deal with that inside calmly. Because you can. Because your source of all of your power, the source of your equanimity, the source of your calmness, the source of your happiness, it all resides right here within you. And what is the worst that's going to happen? Life's going to run you through with that sword. Okay. But better death than living in fear, living in weakness. Be able to accept that, and you find that you can be happy under any circumstance, and you'll find that this is actually true. So have that attitude of being grateful for whatever comes to you, and not pushing it away. Don't push life away. Now that doesn't mean that you have to run and embrace disaster. I'm not saying that. Don't get me wrong. I know that there have been people who sometimes become very enthusiastic on the spiritual quest. Maybe they become monks or whatever, and they say, "I want to burn up all my karma in this life, Divine Mother, give it to me." And that's usually not a wise thing to say, because you don't need to invite. It's a noble aspiration, but let that which is natural come. And you'll find that oftentimes it's not what you thought it would be. There was I come from America, and there was one of the presidents of America about 100 years ago. He was a very calm man. And they said, "Oh, well, sir, what's the secret of your calmness?" And he said, "Well, you see, it's like this. I face 10 to 20 problems every day. And I've found that I don't react to them. I let them come to me. And I found by the time they actually get to me, in front of me, 9 of them have fallen into the ditch by the time they got to me. So why worry about them?" And it's true. We worry and think about what all might happen, but let it come. And this comes with this ability to have a grateful heart, and to actually expand that grateful heart and embrace life. Be positive about life. Embrace it. Approach it as you would a warrior. The phrase that Swami Kriyananda used to have for this it was part of his philosophy. It was say yes to life. Say yes. In other words, when life comes at you, the tendency is to push it away. Just say yes and be affirmative. Now, part of being affirmative, and one of the things that will help you in the sense of being joyful, living joyfully, is when life gives us difficulties, we tend to look at the problems in life. This is a problem, that's a problem, that's a problem. Now, a rational person says, yes, you must know what the problem is, but you need to know the reason you need to know what the problem is so that you can come up with a solution in life. But if you continually look at your problems, it's going to only spiral and keep you on the level of those problems. You'll never be able to rise to the next level, which is that of solution. Be solution conscious. So I would say this, if you're one of those people who sees problems, train yourself to always also, in the next sentence, come up with a solution. But maybe, oh, here's the problem. Oh, we got too many people here. Not everybody can sit on well, what's the solution? But maybe a solution is there's a few empty chairs you could fill. And you come up with a solution instead of always looking at the problem. And sometimes in an organizational sense, and Anda Sangha is an organization, and because of any organization, you have to have meetings. It's part of the unwritten code of our meetings is people come together and they immediately began to talk about the problems. We have to do this. We have to fix that. That's a problem. That's a problem. And if you let it go on that way, nothing gets done. You have to. We make it a somewhat of an unwritten rule that if you're going to point out a problem, you have to point out a possible solution as well. And here's what we can do about it. Because this puts your energy, your thinking, into a positive direction. And what you find is when there's a positive direction, there's an upward movement. Isn't it so? You'll feel there's an actual upward movement of life force in the body. Now, I said I wasn't going to go into yoga too much here, but I can't resist. In the yoga principles, of which Paramahansa Yogananda, these great gurus, were exponents of, there is a principle of movement of energy up versus movement of energy down. And if you want to be happy in life, you need to do those things that encourage an upward movement of life force, prana, energy, an upward movement of life force in your life, in the body, but it's in, just think generally in your life. And so think about this, when you have a problem, oh God, I got a problem. So I got so many problems. There's a sinking feel. I'm sinking underneath my problems. But when you have a solution, oh, I got it. There's an upward movement. And when you have an upward movement, you feel happy. There's a sense of joy there. Whereas the opposite, you feel unhappy. So when you can induce an upward flow of life force in the body, you find that you begin to feel joyful. Now, Lahiri Mahashai, who is the guru here on the far end here, he was the disciple of Mahavatar Babaji. And you all know, you know the tradition of Babaji. And Lahiri was his, in the 19th century at least, he was his foremost disciple in the 19th century. And it was he who Babaji gave the teachings of Kriya Yoga to spread throughout, begin the spread throughout India. Now, that spread was going to take a number of generations, but it was initiated through Lahiri Mahashaya. And Lahiri Mahashaya, he used to say something. He said, solve all of your problems with Kriya Yoga. Because the essence of Kriya Yoga is learning to make this upward movement of life force in the spine. And interesting thing happens when the life force begins to move up the spine. You see life through a different lens. You see something through the lens of problems, but if you raise above it in a higher octave, you say, oh, that's not a problem at all, because you begin to see more vastly. It's like up in a platform on a higher, and you have a much broader vision. And so he would say, solve all problems with Kriya Yoga, because uplift your energy and look at everything through that lens, and you'll find the solution. And this is what we do, of course. If you're interested in those teachings, this is what Ananda Sangha shares, those teachings of Kriya Yoga. It's the same. Be solution-oriented in your day-to-day activities, and you'll find that this will begin to happen. Now, one other thing happens. When you find that energy begins to go up, you feel happy, there is a natural impulse to share those teachings with others. Or not the teachings, to share whatever it is that made you happy. You want to share it with others. Think of this. If you go to the movies, you see a movie that was really great. You really enjoyed it. And what do you want to do? You want to tell other people about it. Say, that was a great movie. You've got to see that. You go to a restaurant, a great restaurant. You got to go there. You have anything that's really had made you happy. You want to share it with other people. Isn't that so? It's natural. Now, there's an expansiveness to it. Expansion. Whenever you expand yourself, your mind is expanded, your consciousness is expanded, your aura has expanded. You feel happier. You feel more joyful now, and you want to share it with other people. Now you take that same principle and you turn it around. If sharing is a natural result of feeling happy, and if you're not happy, how might you become happy? Share. Start to share with other people. Reach out to others. Share what you do have, not your unhappiness. I'm not saying that. Begin to share with other people. Expand your sense of other people, because one of the diseases of unhappiness is it makes us small, and it makes us contract back in on ourselves. But if we can resist that, and if we're aware of that, and if we choose, we begin to expand. So begin in your life introducing ways that you can share with other people. A miserly person, in the sense of miserly, now we think of being a miser is somebody who doesn't give any money. Now I'm not even talking about money here, although you can do that too. But don't be a miser with your kindness. Don't be a miser with your heart's love. Don't be a miser with kind words to other people, with a smile. With a smile. Now, Paramahansa Yogananda used to say, smile. And he says, if you don't know how to smile, take your fingers and push them up like this and learn to smile. He was riding on a train. He was riding in America. Back in those days, they didn't have airplanes between cities, and so he was riding the train. You take the train like here, you do here in India. And so he was riding, and like in the train, you have your seats here, and the other people are there you're looking at each other for a long distance. And and so he was in the train in America going from one city to another. But now, back in those days, he would wear his orange robes. So and because he had orange robes and he had long hair, he would stand out, you see, and people would sort of, say, what is this fellow? Obviously he was from a foreign country also, and so he was in a train, and there was a fellow, probably a very upright, well-dressed fellow, across from him, and the fellow across the seat from him was making these strange faces, very disapproving of Yogananda, because who was this fellow all funny dressed in and he was very disapproving of him. And so Yogananda finally leans forward and he says, Sir. And they go, yes, what do you want? Why are you making those faces at me? And he says, none of your business. And then Yogananda says, well, but sir, it is my business. I am sitting here across from you, and you are making those faces. And you are making those faces, so I can't help but see you. And the man says, oh, you're a real impertinent fellow. And then Yogananda says, well, sir, it's like this. He says, I have found in my life that everyone is a little bit crazy. We're all a little bit crazy. But my craziness is a little bit different than your craziness. How about we discuss? I will tell you about my craziness, and you can tell me about your craziness. And then I think it was the same story, but I may be wrong. But anyway, it goes on to say, and this man turned out to be a movie actor. You see, they were going back to Los Angeles, where the movie companies were. He was a movie actor, and he says, and you tell me, and you tell me about your life, and if your life seems to be better than my life, then I will join what you do. He says, but then I will tell you about my life, and if what I'm doing is better, then you must follow what I do. And so they agreed. And so they talked on the train on the way back. And then Yogananda used to always end that story. He says, fortunately, he agreed with me, and I was saved from having to become a movie actor. But smile. The idea was to smile. But one other, related in that, to change your attitude, to change your consciousness. A couple of other very simple things to do. I've been talking about inner, but there's some outer things you can do. Now, I do this every morning when I'm stable and living where I normally live and have a good routine, which is Pune. I get up early in the morning and I walk to our center, where we have our meditation center. And I do it for two reasons. One, I want to go meditate in the morning. That's the obvious one. But the second one is it gives me a good excuse to force myself to walk, which is we all need to do exercise. And so this is a good excuse. So I walk there, meditate there, and then I walk home. And it's about 1 kilometer away. Not far, but about 1 kilometer. And so I get up early and I walk. And I do an exercise, which I recommend. I breathe, but I don't breathe casually. I walk 1 kilometer, and I inhale 4, 5, or 6, depending upon whether I'm going uphill or downhill. But as I make 4 counts, let's say, or 5 counts, breaths. I breathe in for 4 or 5 counts. I hold 4 or 5 counts, and I exhale with my paces, you see. I may 1 pace, 2 pace, 3 pace, 4 pace, hold pace, 2, 3, 4, exhale. And I do this, and I walk for about 1 kilometer that way. And I try to breathe from the diaphragm and fill the whole chest up as much as I possibly can. Hold it there, and then I exhale. And then, of course, when I do this, I feel like I'm bringing in life force, energy, positiveness, filling it. and then holding it, absorbing it, then exhaling the negative opposite. And I find that this is a good way to wake up in the morning, energize yourself in the morning. But at the same time, as I do that, as you fill the lungs, you bring your shoulders back, and you stand straight. And you develop a habit of trying to always have good posture. You'll find that if you have good posture and you breathe properly, you're going to feel much better. In terms of positiveness, your approach, because your approach to life and your approach to the world around you, your approach to other people is reflected in your body. You can read somebody by their body. You look at their body posture, you look at how they stand, you look at their facial expressions, and you can tell a lot. You look in their eyes, and you can see right away how a person's attitude is toward life. Are they embracing life? Are they happy? Are they accepting? Are they when life comes at them, are they just going to say yes? Or are they going, oh God, no? Reflected in the body. And you can change it. You can change it. Stand up straight. Breathe deeply. Keep the spine straight. And approach life with that. Swami Krishnananda, my teacher, he always stood straight. In fact, he had a big chest. He was like, if he was to run into the wall, it would be his chest would hit first. Boom. That's how, because he was like that. And I remember once when I first came to know him, within my first year, I was walking. And somebody came up behind me. I heard somebody come behind me. And it was this person reached around my body and grabbed my stomach with one arm, and he reached around my chest with the other. No, he reached around my chest with this arm, and he put his other arm in the small of my back, and he went, oh, and he said, stand up straight. And it was Krishnananda, of course. It was Swamiji. He says, you're never going to get anywhere like that. But I was sort of, walking around, slouched over. And I took that lesson to heart, or as best as I could. But it reflects an attitude of how we approach life. If you go into a business meeting, when you go into a business meeting with somebody, your aura should go into the meeting before you go through the door. Yes? You understand? Your aura needs to be projected out ahead of you so that when you meet somebody, so it's something. I mean, you're in a room like this. We should think about it. Expand your aura to the edges of the room to embrace everybody here. This is one of the things that if you're a public speaker, you're taught to do, is to project out there. And this is but do that in your life too, and you'll find the attitude that comes from positively embracing life will allow you and induce a joyful approach to what you're doing in life. And then share what you have. Now, I'm not speaking materially here. Share your good intentions, your good thoughts, your friendliness. Say hello to people. Somebody told me, I was speaking a week or so ago about, I'm going to give this talk on joyful living. What's your suggestion? And this person said, well, tell them this. I was walking down I was walking on the street, and the building I'd go by they had a mirror in the front of the building. And whenever I'd go by that, I would look in the mirror and see the expression on my face. And I'd say, do I like that expression? And she said, no, I don't. It looked grumpy. I look like a grump. And that's how people are perceiving me, because that's what I'm projecting. Why am I looking so unhappy? And there was no reason why. If we have happiness in our life, show it a little bit. I mean, it should give a pleasant. If you always wear a scowl on your face, you're going to end up having those thoughts, attracting those thoughts, and there's no need for it. So think about that. If you want to live joyfully, express that in some fashion. Now, not for show, but just for your own sake. I mentioned sharing, other basic principle. Let me check the time, make sure I don't run out. I always like to leave time for questions and answers, so if you have some, you can be thinking. I mentioned one more thing, that you, in terms of physical posture, Paramahansa Yogananda he would say, we need to be, I mentioned choice. In order for you to make a choice in life, you need to be aware. If you're daydreaming, you're not aware. You need to be conscious so that you can make conscious choices. And how to stay conscious? Well, of course, all of these various things that we share with people in our classes are directly aimed at that answer, to giving an answer to that. But one very simple thing that you can do is keep your attention here at the point between the eyebrows. Put your attention there. Just mentally keep it there and act from that awareness. When you go through life, act. Just like I said, your aura should precede you. Let your aura go out from here, and you'll find that you're aware of what's going on. And in that awareness, you'll begin to develop that as a habit so that you can make choices and you can be conscious of those choices. So try that. Another thing you can do is watch. You are having, I hope right now you're listening, but if not, you're probably having a mental conversation in your mind. You go out the door, you go home, there's a mental conversation going on every day. What is the conversation about? Be aware. What's that conversation? If that conversation is negative, complaining, criticizing, why me? Why did they do that? Well, there's no hope for you to be happy. Look at that conversation and change that conversation to something that's going to be uplifting, that's going to be putting out positive thoughts, positive engagement. And you can use that to actually affirm. I vow to be happy from today onward. I choose happiness. I vow. Actually, let's close our eyes. Let's sit up straight, close our eyes. And I'd like you just to sit calmly, but put your attention at the point between the eyebrows. Look there. This is how we started our discussion. Look there and if you can see a little bit of light or you can imagine light, that's good, but even if it's dark. And just mentally affirm at that point, I choose to be happy. I choose to be joyful. I choose bliss. I'm positive. I'm energetic. I'm enthusiastic. I am positive, energetic, enthusiastic. Let's say those words. I am positive, energetic, enthusiastic. I am positive, energetic, enthusiastic. I am positive, energetic, enthusiastic. Now, open your eyes. You remember that chant we started with? From joy I came, for joy I live, sacred joy I melt again. Choose something, whatever language you choose. Choose something simple and put it there and repeat it. Don't let especially when the mind wants to go in negative ways. You watch it, you catch it. Oh my God, you're complaining. Just substitute something, get it to change and go in a different direction. But all of this comes back again. You have to choose to do it. You have to act. You can be happy if you choose to be happy. Why is it that so many people don't choose that? It's a mystery. It's a mystery, but it's mostly because of habit. And we just don't realize that we have the power to do something else. And that's what I want to encourage you to take up. You have that potential if you just but practice it. And this, of course, is why Ananda Sangha shares these teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. We encourage people to take up the path of meditation. Person learns to meditate. One of the chief benefits of a daily practice of meditation is you learn to increase your awareness and you learn to be able to make choices in life. And so that's what I'm going to leave you with on that, is you can learn to meditate and you learn to be able to choose happiness. Now, I'm going to conclude with just one more story, and then I'm going to open it up to questions. The necessity for action right now. Time is slipping by, and it's going to run out. And then we're gone. We have to come back again and try again. But we have an opportunity. We've been given a gift of time in this life right now. And it's important for us to be able to establish an inner life. Whatever your path is, but you need to have an inner life. You're not happiness, satisfaction. It's easy to fall into the habit that this is going to come from outside of ourselves and not from within. And this has been driven home to me within the last 6 months, because I have a relative who is suffering. He's older than me by 13 years, so he's up in his 80s, up there, quite a bit older, and he is suffering from the loss of memory, the loss of cognitive function. He can't solve problems anymore. He can't read anymore because he gets halfway through the paragraph and he's forgotten the first half, and so he doesn't know what's going on anymore. And so he's declining, and his outer ability. Now he's in a wheelchair. He needs people to assist him. And I love this man very much, but I've seen him go downhill. Now, unfortunately, he has lived his life pursuing happiness outside of himself. Doing something outside and then I'll be happy inside. He doesn't believe in an inner life. Now he has none. He has no inner life. There's nothing there, but yet the outer world has abandoned him. And he has nothing to fall back upon. And so consequently, he suffers. He's in depression. He suffers because there's nothing there to engage him. And on the other hand, I have known people who have suffered from Alzheimer's disease, dementia, that have been, to the very end of their life, have been cheerful, have been positive. They were not able to put 2 and 2 together very easily, at least outwardly, but yet inwardly you could see that they were smiling, that they were joyful. I told some people recently, I have a good friend who lives in our ashram in America, one of the ashrams in America, and he has lost completely his dementia. But he walks around, and he goes about this very large piece of property with a smile on his face and a pair of clippers, and he cuts weeds and brush. He just clip. That's all he can do, but he does it all day long. And he puts them in a pile, and then he goes to the next one, and the landscape looks amazing. It's park-like, because he just day after day, that's what he does. He clips, and he has a big smile on his face. And when people talk to him, he says, I just hear the Om. He's living in the vibration of Om, and he just feels God's presence all day long. And he just clip, clip, clip. Now, my relative, nothing. Because he did not develop it. He did not do anything when he was younger to be able to develop something inward within him. And so you can't wait until that time comes. I recommend to you, now is the time to make the choices and put investment into your life for when that time comes and your time comes. Then you can accept anything that comes to you. It's coming from God, and you live in that joy. So right now we affirm that joy, but we ultimately want to live in that joy. And finally, when Swami Kriyananda, my teacher, his last years of his life was a very, very busy life, a lot of challenges. But he was joyful. He was joyful. And toward the end of his life, he was just in a state of bliss. And sometimes he would start talking, and tears would start coming down his eyes. And he just says, I just feel so much bliss. I just can't stand it. And it would just be coming down. And he gave me and a couple other people that were with him at one meeting a piece of advice. And he says, remember, Jaya, it's not enough to give people these teachings. They're wonderful teachings. He says, that's not enough. He says, you must give people bliss. That's what our role is. And he wasn't just speaking to me. He's speaking to all of us. We need to give each other joy. We need to give each other bliss. They don't need our advice so much, but everybody needs bliss. Everybody needs joy. But God needs instruments. And if you give joy to other people, you will be the beneficiary, because the instrument is blessed by what flows through it. And if beautiful music is flowing through you, you are going to be the one who enjoys that beautiful music the most. And so but you can't wait. You have to initiate it. You must act. You must turn the faucet on through your own affirmative action. And then it begins to flow, and you become an instrument for that. The joyful life that you want has to be produced by you taking the first step, and allow joy to go through you, and then share it with other people, and you'll find that you, for no apparent reason, are happy. Share it with the grocer, with the gateman, the driver. Share it with that's everybody. And that's what you then will find, that you will become happy and you'll be joyful. So with that, I'd like to invite your questions for a few minutes, if we have a few, if anybody has one, and I'll do my best to answer. And I would invite somebody to be courageous enough to start. Okay, now I see one of our brahmacharis here. What Prasanna, what is your question? Are you going to ask a question? Okay. Ask? No?
We normally associate joy with exuberance or excitement.
Yeah.
And even in the sharing, we will think of this outward manifestation of joy from us as sharing our excitement.
Yeah.
But I wanted to also know how to develop calm joy and share that calm joy without that excitement, because that goes up and down.
Well, that's true. And particularly when a person is younger, they tend to be more exuberant that way. But he's saying joy expresses itself outward in exuberance. How can we have that joy more inwardly? And of course, the joy comes first, and then it tends to be exuberant. There is a principle here. Inward and upward versus outward and downward. And when you feel great joy, there's a tendency for you want to go out. But the first thing is if you feel joy, is first try to internalize it and direct it upward within your own self, and then out, then it'll go out naturally. Now, this is the difference between people who are, think of the difference between you feel great love in your heart. Let's say whatever it might be for, but that love in the heart can be expressed devotionally or emotionally, you see. And the difference is that it's directed outward at the world outside of ourselves. There's nothing wrong with outward exuberance, as long as it's not dissipating and you also feel that inwardly. So in a certain sense, you do have to develop that ability of calmness as well, to take it up if you feel it inwardly, because excitement is our habitual pattern, to be outwardly excited. And then you find yourself, you've dissipated it, and then because you've outwardly expressed your joy so much. But you have to take it inward as well. Inward, and then also then sharing it with others. It's something that comes simply with learning. You practice and you'll find that it comes naturally. So. Yes, sir.
What is the best way to put the unnecessary mental conversation at bay?
Yeah, the unnecessary
mental conversation I want to put at bay.
That's actually a deep question. He's asked the question. I mentioned that being aware of that mental conversation that's always going on, how do we keep it at bay or put it to rest? And of course, the first thing, which I think you've already done, is you're aware of it. That's the most. Many people are not even. It never occurred to them. But yes, that's what's going on, is to be able to calm that mental conversation. First, be aware of it. Then, if it's going on, then try to direct it. I mentioned directing it into a positive direction, so that you substitute negative conversation or positive conversation for negative conversation. And ask yourself, who are you talking to? Now, what I did, when I began to notice this conversation, I asked this question of myself, who am I talking to? And I began to imagine myself. By this time, I had come onto this spiritual path, and I began to think in terms of my guru, as I was talking to my guru, and I would have a conversation with him. I'd say, and I would start thinking of God, and I'd say, I'm having a conversation with God. So I would start directing that conversation with God. Now, one thing happens when you're talking to God or your guru, you moderate your conversation. You're aware, wait a minute, maybe I should be not talking about in this forum here. I better. So you start to correct that conversation a little bit, but you start to include the divine into your conversation. Now, how to actually stop the conversation? You see, because we do all the talking. Now, the art of meditation is learning to stop the conversation and start to listen for the reply. And some people wonder, why doesn't God answer my prayers? It's because we are talking all the time. He's not able to give us get a word in edgewise to be able to advise us what to do. So the art of listening is the other half. I think we have the art of conversation down pretty good. Now we need to develop the art of listening to be able to, what is that? Modify what is the conversation, pay attention to it, then start to calm it and listen to it. Now, this is, of course, why we begin to meditate. And one of the techniques in meditation is if you try to stop that conversation, it doesn't happen. You can't do it that way. You can't suppress it. But you can start to direct it in directions. So consequently, there's many ancient techniques, people repeating japa, or prayers, mantra. There's all these sorts of techniques, but you can learn to then direct it, and then it begins to calm down. And once you have calmed it and you begin to become aware of calm stillness behind the conversation, you begin to be able to turn it off and on a little bit. But I think at first it's very good to be aware of it, and that's the most important point right now for you.
Thank you.
Yes. Now, another people I speak about joy. It's important to actually inwardly try to experience joy. Now, I want to clarify a little bit of definition here. I've spoke of happiness, I've spoke of joy, I've spoke about bliss. We mix them up and using one for the other, but there's a little bit of difference between them. Happiness is usually something that makes us feel good that's from outside of ourselves. Something, we won the lottery, somebody gave us something, then I'm happy, or something outside of us happened that made us feel pleasant. That's usually technically what happiness is. Now, an inner happiness that I am inwardly happy no matter what happens outside of myself. That's when we're speaking more about joy. Joy is something inward that is not outwardly stimulated. It reminds us maybe, but it's really something that's inside. It's unconditional by circumstances. And then bliss is, even with joy, there remains a little bit of who is enjoying this. I am. I'm enjoying these thoughts. I am that. As long as there's that thought of I there's a little condition there. It's still going to be up and down. Sometimes I'm joyful, sometimes I'm not. Sometimes I'm joyful, sometimes I'm not, because there's the I there. When we can dispense with the I, that ego, that's when bliss comes. And that's what we're looking for. And that's why we need to have bliss, is the ultimate solution. Joy is good. Let's try for that. Let's live joyfully. But what we really want is bliss. And that's another name for God as well. Ananda, bliss, one of the aspects of the divine. Satchitananda. So anyway, I think I'll leave it at that. And thank you all very much for coming this evening, taking a nice evening out on Sunday. I very much appreciate your participation today. And if you're interested, I think we have some announcements here that we're going to have future programs, and we invite you to participate. Thank you much.